talk about the concept of true trans, there are a number of activists and even some gender critical people who
Mm-hmm.
support the idea that there are individuals who are true trans. And I'm not entirely sure what they mean by it, but it
Mm-hmm.
sort of seems to be that they're accepting the concept that there are some people who are inherently transgender. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's really important to push back against that.
Mm-hmm.
Transgender is not an identity. It's it's a presentation. It's a choice
Mm-hmm.
about how you're wanting to look to the world, and
Absolutely.
it's addressing some underlying issues that have nothing to do with whether or not you were born in the wrong body. And so I really
Mm-hmm.
want to push back on that a little bit today.
Yeah, and there are several true trans individuals. One of them, actually, I think, is the one of the most popular is the pornographer Buck Angel, and although I don't want to encourage anybody to go onto Pornhub and take a look, I have pictures that I've taken from her Pornhub channel, where I have blocked out her information and her face and whatever. These are recent, videos that she's doing in her 60s, promoting pornography. And she's same-sex attracted, we know that, but
Yeah,
she's
she
performing.
was a lesbian. I mean,
I
she was a
mean,
lesbian
yeah.
who decided to masculinize for presentation.
Mm-hmm. And let me tell you that the pornography that I saw is a woman who is pained, pained to be performing sex acts with men. So I'm not going to judge her and what she's saying and her version of events, but I certainly am going to criticize the way that she is making money. And I know, when I was 17, 16, 15, I thought, if when I see these true trans individuals saying, I'm the real deal, but you're probably not, I'm thinking back to my 16-year-old self who would have thought, well, I'm probably the real deal as well. And I think that's an incredibly dangerous idea to be promoting, because these are people who are lifelong medical patients and taking and having body modification procedures.
Right. And the contention of Buck Angel and others like her that
Mm-hmm.
the transition has left them fully happy and satisfied in the world, and that it was, a
Mm-hmm.
great intervention that helped them.
Mm-hmm.
It's really hard to accept that when you
Mm-hmm.
see pictures of her sucking on a man's penis, looking like she's about to gag, looking incredibly humiliated, looking incredibly uncomfortable. And
Mm-hmm.
rumor has it she also is stoned most of the time. This is not
Mm-hmm.
somebody who is a fully functioning, healthy individual. And for her to claim that she, is a true trans and needed to do
Mm-hmm.
this for her own mental health, I think it's just allowing her to run away from those underlying issues that are obviously still haunting her, or she wouldn't be engaging in this really self-harming behavior.
Absolutely. And it is Buck Angel and also another true trans individual, Debbie Hayton, who are repeating these lines, which is, if I wouldn't have transitioned, I would have killed myself. So we know that this is so incredibly dangerous to be promoting, and also not born from the facts, because just recently I spoke to a father whose son did commit suicide after transition. So that's, we don't really know what's going to happen. I mean, I hope that Buck Angel and Debbie Hayton remain in good mental health and everything does work out for them. But I would be very concerned if a female friend of mine was to say to me, Alix, if I didn't have those breast implants, I would have killed myself.
Or that
You
no
know?
had. Or that
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And again, it's such a dangerous narrative. And I think if they came out and said that they're transsexuals and they're comfortable with the way they are, that would be
Mm-hmm.
one thing. But this whole narrative of that there are people who are inherently
Mm-hmm.
transgender is just so dangerous. As you said,
Mm-hmm.
every
Mm-hmm.
kid who has gender dysphoria is going to believe that they're true trans. And it also allows gender doctors an out because they can say, well, I'm pretty sure the kids I'm working with are true trans. I have to do
Mm-hmm.
this because we have these true trans adults who say that they were suicidal. And so we need to
Mm-hmm.
give them these interventions. And again, relying
Mm-hmm.
on that suicide claim is incredibly dangerous. We should never capitulate to suicide threats. There's,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, if I went into the doctor and said, my breasts are too small, I am going to kill myself if you do not augment my breasts, that
Mm-hmm.
doctor would refer me to a psychiatrist and potentially to an inpatient treatment center because it's clear that
Mm-hmm.
I'm not mentally sound. That's what should
Right.
be happening to people who say they have to masculinize or feminize their bodies in order to
Mm-hmm.
survive. That's
Mm-hmm.
someone who has some significant mental health issues, and we shouldn't be providing them with cosmetic interventions to prevent
Mm-hmm.
suicide. We should be figuring out what's going on in their lives that they're suicidal.
Absolutely. And I do have to really question some of the organizations out there who are teaming. I believe I believe they're not doing it out of malice, of course, but I do believe they're doing it for political reasons. Nobody wants to be seen as that dreaded word transphobic. So they're trying to, I think, couple with a group of, basically a psychiatric population to try and prove their virtue. Now, I think that true trans is simply another version of gender identity ideology amongst, within the sphere of trans activism, or within the kind of the trans activist lingo. They call true trans true scum and trans medicalist. And the reason for that is because they say, I'm the real deal. I have gender dysphoria. I have proven myself by having medical intervention. I'm the real deal, and that's why you should listen to me. And don't listen to the non-binary people and all of the people claiming that they're demigender. That's silly. But me, I was born in the wrong body.
Right. And it's biological. There's nothing I can do about it. It's innate.
Absolutely.
And I think you're right.
Absolutely.
I don't think that the organizations that are promoting this are doing it with malice, but I do feel
Mm-mm.
like there's a pressure to appear not to be transphobic. And so they can say,
Mm-hmm.
oh, we're not transphobic because we
Mm-hmm.
support those that are true trans. And we support,
Absolutely.
those who need to medicalize for their own mental health. And I
Mm-hmm.
think it's coming from a place of not wanting, to hurt people's feelings, but really it's
Mm-hmm.
very damaging. And I think it's super important that we hold the line on this and say,
Mm-hmm.
there might be people who feel more comfortable presenting in more masculine or more feminine ways. That does not
Mm-hmm.
mean they're true trans. That means they're more comfortable presenting one way or another. Just like I'm much more
Absolutely.
comfortable presenting in black t-shirts than I am in, floral t-shirts.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that I'm goth. It means that I'm, more comfortable in black. The,
Right.
the way we choose to present doesn't define our identity or innately who we are,
Mm-hmm.
nor does who we are, how we present cure gender dysphoria. And that's something that I think is really important is people who support the idea of true trans often say people have to do this in order to treat their gender dysphoria, when in fact we know that that's not true. There are lots of successful interventions for gender dysphoria that don't require harming an otherwise healthy body. And that's what this comes down to, is that these are
Absolutely.
people who are endorsing others harming their otherwise healthy body. These are people who would not endorse someone cutting themselves. They would not endorse someone who's bulimic, who's more comfortable being thin, who makes themselves throw up. That's not healthy. These are people
Mm-hmm.
who on any other, metric would not support self-harming behaviors, but in this
Mm-hmm.
one instance, they're willing to support it.
I also find it particularly ironic that these, several of these organizations claiming to be out there for the rights and the well-being of children have several of these true trans individuals who have destroyed their families. I mean, I don't know if you had the misfortune of seeing that disturbing Debbie Hayton clip, where I was simply horrified at what, you know, he was putting his wife through. Now, I'm not one to really get involved with someone else's marriage or speculate, but this was on a documentary for everybody to see. And I certainly made my judgment about that. And the person who's interesting, or the person who I'd like to speak to in that scenario, is always going to be the wife. I want to know exactly how this is affecting the wife. And I saw. And furthermore, there are several children who are being damaged in this process. Now, Buck Angel, Susan, or whatever we would like to call her, she is managed, I believe, but she has her own Pornhub channel where she is promoting and selling her FTM sex toys to younger individuals, to younger people. And I'm not going to, I don't want to get into the whole thing about judging and whatever, but this is somebody who is promoting an industry, is degrading and is sick and is depraved and as harmful as pornography is to a younger generation. And I think that that's no surprise why FTMs are overrepresented in pornography and overrepresented in OnlyFans.
Right. Well, also, you know, people who engage in pornography often have underlying, you know, feelings of self-hatred and shame, and so, you know, being a porn star is not an indication of stellar mental health, and that's something that I think, you know, for Buck Angel to be someone who is touted as, you know, a role model for kids who are suffering from gender dysphoria is incredibly problematic. We also know that a lot of young women and girls are developing gender dysphoria as a result of porn and the degrading and just disgusting brutality that occurs in porn. And we have girls being depicted licking spit off of the ground, or, you know, feces off of somebody's rear end. I mean, really being choked until they pass out, being spit upon, being slapped. These are the kinds of images that girls are seeing in porn. And for us to have somebody who is being held up as a role model for girls who are suffering from gender dysphoria involved in that industry is so problematic.
It's interesting because when I had the misfortune, I mean, I did write a piece kind of exposing a little bit of this dangerous pornography, you know, which Buck is involved in. And one of the pop-ups that I did see that was just behind it is a site called Latina Abuse, where women are forced to eat out of dog bowls whilst having racist abuse shouted at them. So, you know, the way that I look at the porn industry is a little bit like, you know, the way that one might look at slavery. You know, it's not something that we should ever have to tolerate in any of its forms, and it's bankrupt to its absolute core. And we should be trying to abolish it, not regulate it, and certainly not get into bed with a pornographer because they say a couple of things that we might agree with. I watched that trigonometry episode with Buck, which actually said, you know, the tagline of it was "Stop medicalizing kids," which I thought was very interesting because you know, she's basically saying the moment you're 18, you want to walk through the door of a Planned Parenthood, I'm on your side, but don't transition those 5-year-olds and those 6-year-olds. What a
very mixed message. It's
mixed message.
And it's really disingenuous. Here we have Buck also, I believe, has children, and so, you know, her children are being given a very dangerous message that it's okay to self-harm. And so I think that you know, it's really important to really push back against this concept. And I think it's okay to say there are people who enjoy presenting more feminine and more masculine. You know, that's fine. You know, just looking at the two of us, you present more feminine than I do. I present more feminine than some other women do. And you know, that's fine. It doesn't change our biology. It doesn't change who we are. There are
Mm-hmm.
people who suffer from gender dysphoria, but changing, like self-harming is not a way to treat a mental health issue. You don't treat a mental health
Mm-hmm.
issue by harming yourself. You treat a mental health
Mm-hmm.
issue with cognitive behavioral therapy or some other form of therapy that allows the person to understand those underlying issues, and not by
Mm-hmm.
telling them, oh, you're probably born in the wrong body, you're inherently flawed, and the only solution is to damage yourself.
Yes. And furthermore, there is this running issue, this running problem of trans-identified males taking up spaces in radical feminist organizations,
Yeah.
which is sort of dumbfounding.
Mhm.
I've even seen some Christian organizations that are platforming a number of these true trans individuals, and I just really wonder, okay, are we trying to be inclusive, or are we just performing this absolutely crazy dance
Mhm.
in an attempt not to seem like we disapprove of somebody's choices?
Mhm.
I personally think that despite the fact that I stick fake eyelashes to my eyes, I don't support body modification. I don't think that people should have breast implants. I think that that whole industry should be completely shut down. Um, and I'm sort of feeling like I'm living in a twilight zone where I'm watching a radical feminist organization, and out of 6 women, 2 of them are men with breast implants.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that just really undermines our credibility if we accept that a male can be a
Mm-hmm.
woman and represent
Mm-hmm.
women in a feminist
Mm-hmm.
or gender critical perspective.
Mm-hmm.
It really is confounding. And like you said, I think that there's this sense of, that we'll be able to be politically correct if we include them. We don't
Mm-hmm.
want to be viewed as hateful or bigoted, and we want to reach as many people as possible. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that one of the messages that gives is that we don't care enough to speak truth, that we're and that it's hateful to speak truth. And that's something
Mm-hmm.
that we need to fight it. That's how the gender industry has really gotten so entrenched, is by convincing people that they're not allowed to speak the truth, that you have to
Mm-hmm.
use the wrong pronouns, you have to use the wrong name, or else you're hateful. And
Mm-hmm.
sort of this acceptance of the concept of true trans is really
Mm-hmm.
buying into that. So it's really undermining everything that gender critical people are trying to do.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I also would just like to remind people what the true trans or the trans medicalist narrative, what that leads to. So that leads to Scott Wiener passing a law whereby there's going to be 300 rapists transferred into the female estate in California. You can go to the Women's Liberation Front website and actually see some of the letters that are written by incarcerated women saying, hang on a minute, we're really, really, really frightened. Where else does transmedicalism lead us? It leads us to the medicalization of young people. When I think about Partners for Ethical Care, when I think about our message, of course, we're focusing on kids.
Mhm.
However, we're abolitionists.
Mhm.
We want to abolish this industry. We don't want to abolish the trans-identified people, of course not, but we want to abolish this predatory industry, which is predicated on the most horrific form of I would describe it as like runaway capitalism. Okay. I mean, when I say that, I mean predatory capitalism, almost like, you remember how things got really out of control with the subprime mortgage crisis. That's the level of horrible predatory medicine that we're dealing with right now. We want to abolish it. We don't want to regulate it.
Right.
And true trans are regulators. They're not abolitionists. And much like the abolition of the sex industry, it's very important that we know who we're dealing with here.
Yeah.
When you speak to abolitionists for the sex industry, they don't have on kind pimps.
Right.
They don't. Yeah, I mean,
And
they
he's
don't.
actually a really nice pimp. He treats the women
Mm-hmm.
really well when he prostitutes them. Yeah, you don't have
Absolutely, yeah.
that. Yeah.
You don't have it.
Other thing
But
I
it,
think is so important is that most of these people who claim that there is true trans support social transitioning of children as
yeah.
an appropriate response to gender dysphoria. And we know that the social transition leads to the medicalization. And so it's like they're
Mhm.
saying, we don't believe in medicalizing children, wink, wink, you know, but we
Right.
actually do. We actually believe that, you know, as soon as that kid turns 18, more power to him, go ahead and do it. We do,
Hmm.
and that concept again, that a child can be born in the wrong body and therefore is inherently flawed and the only
Hmm.
solution is to transition, is just
Yeah.
incredibly damaging, and especially damaging to what I see as you know, gay kids, lesbian girls, gay boys,
Yeah.
boys who are sensitive, who are getting this
Hmm.
message that they're
Hmm.
inherently flawed and the only solution is to damage their bodies. You know,
Yeah.
butch lesbians who are told they're not acceptable, that the only
Right.
way that they're going to be okay is to transition. These are the messages they're giving. This is not
Yeah.
politically correct. This is not inclusive, and this does not
No.
promote diversity.
Also, there's an element of lying going on as well. I mean, I got about half an hour into Blair White's, who I don't dislike him. He's fine. I'm really happy. I hope he lives his best life with his husband, boyfriend, whatever. He better not have a surrogate child, because surrogacy is a dangerous and disgusting industry. However, um, I'm listening to him talking about the fact that he was made trans in utero. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
listening to this. I'm like, this is not even indicated by the slightest bit of science. And you know, when we think about feminists or we think about the women's movement, we don't believe in any of this. We don't believe that gender is a brain thing. We don't believe in brain sex. I mean, all of this is just total nonsense. So, and Blair is a particular type of true trans, right?
Right.
He's a homosexual transsexual. There's many people, many autogynephiles, who are being accepted into these so-called gender critical spaces, where I don't understand that. I
Well,
really don't.
basically, it's a sexual perversion that has gained societal acceptance, and it's a perversion that harms women and children.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And they perform public confessions
Mhm.
of their autogynephilia. And I feel that they, you know, they go, oh, I'm an autogynephile and it's so difficult for me. It's so hard. And I have to do this and I have to do that. Well, that's what a sex buyer would say. A horny sex buyer, a horny John, would go on and on and on about how much he just needs it. But we wouldn't
And
say
he's
to
gonna
him,
treat the prostitute really well. It's okay.
really well. It's
Be great.
okay. It's absolutely, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It's so,
it's all
it's
part of
gone.
that same ideology, which is really denigrating women. It's dangerous for children, and it's, you
Mm-hmm.
know, as you said, it's all part of this capitalist ploy to
Mm-hmm.
medicalize children and adults
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
for the rest of their lives.
And also, when we say a capitalist ploy, like I'm not one of these people that's oh, I believe in socialized medicine, for example, but I'm not one of these people that's like, let's shut down capitalism. I'm talking about the predation. I'm talking about this runaway, disgusting, hormones being advertised to 18-year-olds. I'm talking about the most predatory and filthy versions of, of capitalism that we've ever seen. It's really on this level. I mean, you know yourself, when you're watching YouTube, and you're getting promoted these independent gender clinics. I don't know what else to call it apart from runaway predatory capitalism.
Well, and
I don't know.
it really undermines our confidence in medicine and in
Mm-hmm.
policy, because we now
Mm-hmm.
have policymakers who are telling us that men can become women and we have to just accept that. And
Mm-hmm.
so it really is a great way to really degrade society, because it undermines
Mm-hmm.
our confidence. It
Mm-hmm.
undermines science. You know, we have kids now being taught that it's possible to be born in the wrong body, which is nonsense. And so,
Yeah.
you know, on so many levels, it's just this sort of this attempt to, you know, be predatory really towards an entire population. And
I
so
have
Oh, go
I
ahead.
have a question for you, Erin. So maybe we're being all, maybe we're being totally unfair and ridiculous, but just thinking through the motions, what do you think would be the benefit if Partners for Ethical Care was to have an autogynephile as one of our advisory members? No, I'm being totally
Oh, I
serious.
know. Right. Yeah.
We
What would be
we
the benefit would be that we would be able to more fully understand their predatory behavior.
Mhm.
That would be
Yeah,
the benefit.
I
Um,
mean, just trying to think about the way that Partners for Ethical Care is working. I mean, we operate like, most people know, a 24/7 helpline, hotline for people in distress. Would we benefit by having an autogynephile on our advisory board? I'm not particularly sure that we would. So I don't know why other organizations really feel the need to do this when they can simply say nothing about it.
Right. And it really is an acceptance. It's sort of like
Mhm.
having an active alcoholic running AA meetings. It really sort of undermines the power of the message. And I do feel like
Mhm.
it's almost like people think if they make these just incremental changes, that's what we need to do. But the problem is these incremental changes, if they're buying into the overarching ideology, then it's going to undo all of our efforts. And so
Yeah.
I would just encourage people to come to Partners for Ethical Care, come and share your stories, come and share your insights. If you do think we would benefit from having an autogynephile on our,
Mhm.
board, on our directors, advisory board, tell us
Or a
more.
pornographer.
Or pornographer.
Let us know.
Yeah,
Mhm.
let us know how that would benefit our efforts. Um,
Mhm.
at this point, we're really confounded as to how that would in any way help our efforts, but we are very clear about how it will undermine our efforts.
I'm also particularly just wanting to put the message out here. So, as I sort of always say when we're signing off, if you know a woman who is incarcerated anywhere in the world, in Canada, in the United Kingdom, in the United States, and they're concerned about males being moved to their prisons, we want to hear from you. Of course, we will be referring you to another organization that can fight that for you. But if you are the parent as well of, if you are the child of somebody who has a transition, we do want to hear about you because we want to be reporting on that a
Yeah, I
little
think
bit
that's a
more.
population that's really overlooked, and I'm hearing
Mm-hmm.
more stories about children who are really suffering because their
Mm-hmm.
parents have done this transition.
Mm-hmm.
And I think about my son actually there's a young woman who he went to high school with who has two twin daughters who suddenly has embraced this ideology, and it just breaks my heart thinking about her daughters suddenly being told, oh, your mother is actually a father, or your mother is actually a they, them, or your mother's
Yeah.
actually not your mother. And how that's basically ripping a parent away from a child and totally distorting their reality. There's no
Mm-hmm.
way this is beneficial to these kids. And there's no way
Mm-hmm.
that we can support that if we're trying to really attack this gender ideology.
Mm-hmm. And just one last thing. Again, we do operate a 24/7 chat line to anybody who is in absolute dire need of help. And we, of course, want to hear from you. And we're really, we always say we're in this for the long haul because we are. We're not going to give up anytime soon, as I'm sure everybody probably has guessed. And we're just about to celebrate our 1 year of being a nonprofit. So that's incredibly exciting. And yes, just come to our website, come to Partners for Ethical Care. If you're closeted and you want to promote us, or you want us to send a book
Mhm.
to somebody in your school district, contact us. We want to hear from you. No matter what the circumstances are, we want to hear from you if you've been
Yeah.
affected by these issues.
Yeah, and we do appreciate all the support we've gotten. It's just been incredible. The last few weeks,
Yeah,
we've gotten just such an outpouring. And I think it's
I
because
know.
people are starting to realize how incredibly damaging this ideology is.
Absolutely. Yeah.